Hello YouTubers, I thought I'd do a video of the X10 Mini Pro just to show you some of the apps that I've got on it which I think are really helpful to use on the Mini Pro in the 2.1 firmware, and I thought I'd also sort of say a little bit of spiel after it also. Okie dokie, so let's get started. First up, the case and the screen guards that I got were from eBay and they weren't a lot of money, so that was really groovy. The first app, as you can see, the clock on this, the top half of the clock, it's either dark or transparent, which is a little bit annoying. The first app that I'm going to talk about is the Digiclock app, which I got off of the Android market. As you can see, the text is the same colour and you can see it, and it's really groovy, and I would highly recommend you get it. You can customise it a lot, which is really groovy. The only annoying thing is on the Mini Pro, if you tap it, it goes into the alarm clock, which is a little bit annoying, and I haven't found a way of turning that off yet. So that is one little gripe, but it is still a good app to have. Next up is the speed dial app, which I got off of Mobile 24, and basically you just tap it once and it'll do a speed dial type thing where it phones up whatever number you've put in there. I don't know whether you can put more than one number in it yet. I haven't tried that out yet, but it is a good app to have. Next up is the Lgcamera app. This is a free app. You can get the Pro version, but on the X10 Mini Pro, I would say it's not really worth it because it doesn't really change a lot. I got this app because in the 1.6 firmware, you had a fixed focused video record, which was really handy to have. I thought the autofocus would be really good to have. It is if you're looking at small text and you need to do a sort of macro video on something, but if you're videoing yourself, it constantly jumps all the time, which is really annoying. Now in this app you can change the focus mode, which I shall show you now. There are the three focus settings: auto, which is fixed focused; macro, which obviously you know what macro is; and semi-continuous, which is a sort of autofocus. If you put it on the semi, it's not as jumpy as the Android version, which I really like, and the fact that you can put the autofocus on, which will fix focus it, is really good to have as well. Also, it gives you quite a lot of resolution settings, he says. Well, basically you've got 3 resolution settings that you can change there, which is really handy if you want it smaller or bigger or whatever. You can change the file format that it's recorded in, and you can also muck about with the sound and all the rest of it. Having done that myself, I didn't really notice that much difference in the sound or video quality, but I like to have it recorded in MP4 just so that it's easier to edit and watch in QuickTime. So that's groovy. This app and the other app, camera app I'll tell you about, doesn't affect the main Android camera, which is good. So you can still use those as well as these apps, which is groovy. Next app is the Advanced Task Killer. Now I think this is helping. There are a lot of apps running in the background, and to be able to turn them off to save memory is a really good thing to have. So the Advanced Task Killer is a good app to have if you want to get rid of all that background noise, as it were, and just concentrate on the things that you want to use at the time, which is a good app to have as well. File Expert and OI File Manager are good apps to have, that one and that one, because it enables you to be able to install apps off of your SD card if you've downloaded them off the internet. You have to give permission to be able to do that, but that's easy and straightforward thing to do. The last app is the Pro Zoom 5x. Now this is a very basic zoom app. It gives you zoom on the stills camera, which is quite handy to have if you want zoom on your camera. I found it quite helpful, and it doesn't affect the stills camera on the Android firmware, so that's really good thing to do, and I shall quickly show you what it's like. So there you go, there's your zoom. you can change the autofocus and various other different filters and stuff, which is really groovy. So that's it for the apps. So that's quite good. I do like the phone. I do think it is a good phone to have. The keyboard on it is really nice, and that was the main reason why I got it, is for the keyboard and the fact of going on the internet. In the 1.6 firmware, the battery life seemed to be better than 2.1 firmware. I'm not really sure what the battery life is like at the moment, because I've only charged it a couple of times and people have been telling me that the battery needs to settle in. So I'll have to sort of keep you updated on the battery life. I charged the phone up to 100% and I used the phone a lot on the internet, checking my emails, sending texts, used the phone as a mobile phone, used the camera a lot, and it lasted for 22 hours. Then I had to recharge it. I charged it at 5 o'clock yesterday, and so far I've hardly used it at all, and it's down to 62%. Now, I started doing these videos about 40 minutes ago. 40 minutes worth of just showing you the display and going into one or two apps has made the battery go down from 75 to 62 in 40 minutes, and that is just using the display, not using Wi-Fi or anything like that. Now, I don't know whether that's good or bad or what. To me, that would say that the battery life is a bit naff, and it's a little bit disappointing because this is a good phone to have. The 2.1 firmware does make the internet better, and it does seem to be a good firmware to have. The only problem is it seems that the battery life is slightly worse than the 1.6. Sony Ericsson have said that they're not going to update the X10 range to the 2.2 Android firmware or the 2.3 Android firmware. I have seen on YouTube alone at least 2 or 3 videos where people have downloaded the 2.3 and 2.2 firmware onto their X10 phones and it's worked okay. So it's not a case of the phone not being able to handle it. It's just for some reason Sony Ericsson decided that it wasn't worth doing. Now, they have said that they are going to be continuing to update the 2.1 firmware, but how that works I don't know, and we'll have to wait and see. If there was a couple of things that I would like improved on this, first of all, it would be the battery life. To be able to use the internet and not babysit the battery all the time would be a real bonus, and it would really make this phone a hell of a lot better. Also, to have a zoom on the video and on the stills camera would be really good, and also to have the option to turn off the autofocus would be really good as well. Now, whether that is options that can be done in the 2.1 firmware, I don't know. I know that there are applications where you need the higher firmwares in order to use them, plus there are options in the 2.2 and 2.3 firmware which you can't do in the 2.1. So they are all issues for Sony Ericsson to sort out, and hopefully they will. As far as my opinion on the phone, I really do like this phone. I think it is a great phone, and I do find that I'm constantly playing with it all the time. But like I've said, I also find that I'm constantly checking the battery power all the time, and that's the only downfall with it really, because the other things can be worked around. I think if you're thinking about getting this, then it is a good phone to have. The QWERTY keyboard is really nice to use, but what you've got to be aware of is if you do the 2.1 firmware, then the battery life is going to be affected, and hopefully we might get the better firmware updates and better battery life and all that sort of stuff. So there you go, that's my video. I'm going to put all of the apps in the description so that you can see what apps I've been talking about, and also I'll put a link to the Mobile 24 website that I was talking about, so that you guys can check it out for yourselves. Any questions, please ask away, and I'll do some more later on. Okay, bye bye for now.